Okay, good afternoon and welcome to Yeshiva's YouTube. We're learning this year is Table Enabled, we titled it. I titled it, not we. I don't have a team like some of these other channels. I don't have a team. I don't have the money for a team. Do everything myself, the graphic design by myself, the branding myself, the marketing myself, the producing the shiurim and the producing of the videos and the editing myself also. Everything I teach myself, all these things. It's still a work in progress, but hopefully I'll be big enough one day to hire other people to help me with this because it is a lot of work, because it is overwhelming. But we're here, we're still going. Table enabled. Shulchan Aruch Yomi Samach Gimel 63 Orach. I am Leishe B'Shas Krias Shema V'Lo Yishan. How are you supposed to say Krias Shema? You have to be sitting, standing. Could you be sleeping and saying Krias Shema? Is dreaming Krias Shema the same thing? Could be Yosei through a dream? We'll find out these answers and more coming up. All right, Aleph. Kore ota mahalich omer o shochev o rochev al gavi behema o yoshev. Technically, Allah is, the Gemara in Brachos says that you can even read it while you're walking. You don't have to stop, right? Or you're lying down, or you're riding an animal. And of course, if you're driving your Tesla, you could also say it only in a Tesla because it's electric. If you're going, if you're using gasoline, even diesel, I don't think you're allowed to say it because, it's not safe for, the environment. It's not safe for the atmosphere. Fossil fuels are not good. So therefore, the Mishnah Berurah says if you're using fossil fuels, then you're going to have to stop in your car and, park, make sure to park, and you got to get a good parking spot, like not one of those parking spots where you're just backing in and, like there's no room between you and other cars. You have to have a nice parking spot. And then you have Yeshiva Das. Otherwise, you feel like you're gonna get a ticket from there. When you back out, you might knock into the other guy's car. So you have to have a good, ample size parking spot. But if you're in a Tesla, right? You're using electricity. You're not ruining. It's green. You're not ruining the environment. So then there's a special kula. Mishnah Berurah says that you can, right? You can say Kriya Shema even while you're driving, even when you're the driver, right? And certainly Kol Shekain, he says, if it's autonomous is driving, right? If it's driving by itself, Kol Shekain, maybe you don't have to worry about the road. And I'm joking. But the halacha is obviously you can say it just like you can say it if you're on an animal. You can say it if you're in a car. Avalo parakdan, but you can't do it. Parakdan is lying on your stomach. You can't say it lying down where your back is on a bed or on the floor. I don't mean on the floor, man. On the floor. When we said you can lie, you can say Kriya Shema lying down. That means that you're leaning on one of your sides. There's a discussion, right? How the best way to sleep is. You're not supposed to sleep on your back or on your stomach because it'll bring you to your hurim, bad dreams, and you might have zera come out. I don't know. This is a different halacha, but this is a halacha about saying Kriya Shema. Really, it's better not to. The Ramah says it's better not to be lying down. Lying down is b'di'evet. But we're talking about, the Gemara says Rabbi Yochanan, I think. Rabbi Yochanan was a very fat person. He was very overweight, so it was very hard for him to get up. So once he's lying down, Mishnah Berurah adds that he didn't have clothes on, so he used to sleep without clothes, right? I don't know why people sleep in pajamas nowadays. You gotta sleep, especially in the summer. You take off your shirt, you take off your pants, maybe wear underwear. But, besides that, that's how I sleep. And I have the air conditioner on also. So, you took off your clothes, put on your clothes, tircha, you don't have to stand up. This is where the Shulchan Aruch says this. If you're very fat, right, and you can't even turn on your side, so then just turn a little bit on your side. Or you're a sick person, right? You're weak, you're very weak. So then just turn on your side a little bit. The reason you can't be lying down on your stomach or your back, because just like the reason it caused you to be motzi zera, so therefore it looks like you're in a position that's called gaiva and srara. The Mishnah Berurah says like you're reigning over Hashem. You're not giving, and one of the purposes of Kriya Shema is kabbalas olmos shamayim, to accept the yoke of heaven. So therefore, you have to be in a proper position. Lying down is b'di'evet, but if you have to, you can lie down. Beis misharotza lahachmir la'amod kshu yosher l'krosam umad nika avaryan. Now, this is talking about in the morning, Kriya Shema, that if you want to be machmir and you're sitting down, you're in the middle of shul, and you decide just for Kriya Shema I want to stand up because, standing up is more proper, it's more formal, Where did I hear this? That somebody, oh, yeah, I read this in about, I don't know, if about somebody, maybe it was a gadol, about when he was speaking with his Rebbe, who was another gadol. He made sure whenever he called him on the phone, he would stand up, even though he wasn't in the physical presence of his Rebbe, but he didn't feel comfortable sitting down talking to his Rebbe on the phone. So that's a very madrega. But if you want to do it with a Krias Shema, he's firmer than Krias Shema, because Krias Shema you're not supposed to stand. Why? Because for a different reason. The reason you're not supposed to stand for Krias Shema, the Gemara explains, is because Machlokes Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel in the Gemara on Brachos. What is the interpretation of B'shach B'chav Kumecha? According to Beis Shammai, B'shach B'chav Kumecha literally means when you go to sleep, you should say it lying down, and when you Kumecha in the morning, you should say it standing up. So therefore, Beis Hillel said that's not the halacha. B'shach B'chav Kumecha just means that tell me the time frames when you say B'shach B'chav when people are going to sleep, but Kumecha when people are getting up. That's when you're supposed to say it, not about your physical position when you're saying Krias Shema. So therefore, if you go ahead and pass like Beis Shammai, we pass like Beis Hillel, you're an Avarian because you're over on Divrei Beis Hillel, and we pass like Beis Hillel, you're Polish Matzibor. So you shouldn't do that. You are Yotze B'diavad. The Mishnah Berurah says if you did this, you shouldn't do it. Gimel, and he adds the Mishnah Berurah that even if you didn't realize you're not doing it for that purpose. You just had to stand up because, I don't know, you had pins and needles running through your back because you're sitting too much. It's still not okay. I don't know if I agree with that. I think it depends if you're doing it with kavanah daf gumecha. You're getting up for that reason. But Mishnah Berurah says you shouldn't do it even if you're not for that reason. Gimel. Let's say you're going on a trip and you want to read Krias Shema. Let's start with La'amad B'Pasuk Rishon. Here it says supposed to stop. Now we just said before in Halacha Aleph that you could say Krias Shema even l'chadchila when you're riding on an animal or you're walking. So what is halacha over here? The Gemara brings the Gemara in Brachos. The Rava did this. Mishur answers that's mitzvah min amuvkar. The best thing to do because you have the most kavanah. You're supposed to have kavanah. We'll see in a second whether it's Perish Amilim or just Mitzvah Shrichas Kavanah to know that you're doing the mitzvah. So therefore you're supposed to stop. Mitzvah and Amuvkar, the best thing is that's not called, if you're walking and you stop walking, that's not called Ukumecha, Shal Beis Shammai. That just means you stop walking. Dalet Ikar Kavanah Hu Pasuk Arishon. The main Kavanah, Pasuk Arishon, Hilchach, Im Karav Elochiv Libo, Pasuk Arishon Liyatzig De Chavaso. The Choser V'Korah. If you didn't have Kavanah for the first Pasuk, Shema Yisrael, you have to read it. This is in addition by the Rashba. The Rashba adds this, that this halacha, which is based like Rav Meir, it's a couple of different days in the Gemara. What's midoraisa by Krias Shema is the first pasuk, the first parsha, or the first two parshios. We pasuk and we're making like Rav Meir. Only the first parsha is midoraisa. The Rashba adds in that even the one who says that you don't have to have kavanah for mitzvahs, you have to have kavanah for the first pasuk. For what? For the Perish Amilim. This is his Chiddush, the Rash, but you have to have Kavanah for the Perish Amilim. It's not clear from the Gemara that you have to understand what you're saying. If you listen to my shir yesterday, Exactitude and Halacha or OCD, coming from the Real Me, chapter 11, we talked about, one of the examples the author of that book cited was saying Krias Shema with Kavanah, have Perish Amilim, and I mentioned the way of fixing that is to be medaktik and really what the Halacha is, to find out exactly the precise Halacha. And it happens to be, it's not a Gemara, this is the Rashba's interpretation. I think there are other Rishonim that argue that say that Kavanah by Krias Shema is Mitzvah Srichas Kavanah, meaning knowing that you're doing the mitzvah, not that you have to have Kavanah for Perish Amilim. Imagine if you took that weight off someone's shoulder and you said to the guy, you don't have to understand what you're saying. He's not going to think, Shema, hear, Yisrael, oh Israel, and thinking, replaying those words in his mind. I remember, I recounted, there was a guy who used to in yeshiva, half an hour after davening, he'd be saying Krias Shema again and again and again because he felt he wasn't having Kavanah for Perish Amilim. The easy answer is to say this is not the proper halacha. The proper halacha is you don't have to have Kavanah, you just have to be knowing doing the mitzvah. And I mentioned earlier, by Simon Samech, a mitzvah Srichas Kavanah, you don't have to think that you're doing the mitzvah, you just have to be in a situation like part of a minyan when you're saying Krias Shema. Obviously you're doing it for the mitzvah, you don't have to think anything. Yosta, even if you hold mitzvah Srichas Kavanah, which we do hold mitzvah Srichas Kavanah. Hey, in my Yashan, the Tzarim Latom Irma, so Ashikra Pasuk Rishon, who are Mamish. If the guy's sleeping, right, and the Zman for Krias Shema is going to pass, as I mentioned, the Zman for Krias Shema really doesn't pass. You really have the whole day. According to some opinions, you could even make it up at night. And for night, you could even make it up the next day, according to some opinions. The guy's not going to say Krias Shema, and we hold, I guess, technically, that you don't have Tashlumin. So the whole day is passed, and he's not saying Krias Shema. You can wake him up, the whole night passed. He fell asleep, he didn't say Krias Shema. So before technically Netzach Chama, you wake him up and make sure he says Krias Shema, at least the first pasuk. Mikan ve'elach eman saros so k'dei sheyikra v'hu er mamish, shal pishu korim misnamne miyatza. Right? Technically, even if you hold a mayor, the first pasuk is mitzvah al-raisa, so therefore, technically, we only require him to be fully awake for the first pasuk, because there you have to have kavanah. This is assuming that you have to have kavanah or pirush hamilim, I assume, that you have to understand what you're saying. And according to Rav Meir, the rest of Krias Shema, the rest of the first parak and the second parak are midirabanan. So therefore, if misnamnem yatzak, you're dozing off, you're yotze. The source of this halacha, again, these are the Rishonim that talk about this over here. I don't know why you can't be yotze the first pasuk from misnamnem. Also, the Gemara talks about being yotze tekiyah shofar and things like that. Mikra Megillah, things you have to hear, right? Misnamnem, whether you're yotze or not. But if you're saying the words, you're saying the words. Whether you're dozing off and your mind is not 100% here, you said the words. So that huadin shasei v'shikor ayin lekaman siman tzadi tet sif aleph. The same thing applies if you're drunk, right? Technically, you could be drunk for the rest of Krias Shema, but first pasuk you should be sober. Check the state or the country regulations of what is considered the legal driving limit, and that is the halacha of how drunk you have to be. That's not the halacha. The Torah has guidelines of what's considered drunk or not. Vav, we'll get to that later on Siman Tzadi Ted in 99. Hakore Vav, Hakore Krias Shema, lo yirmos be'einav, lo yikras b'tzvasav. When he's saying Krias Shema, he shouldn't motion with his eyes, or he shouldn't, mouth something to somebody without saying the word. Lo you're about supposed to. He shouldn't point. Don't point, right? The Parsha Rishona, the first Parsha, Ika Kabbalah Smalach Malach Shemayim. It's like you're reading temporarily. You're reading in a non-permanent fashion. The Gemara darshins in Yuma v'dibartabam that the Torah should be your ikr. You should make them keva. You should make them permanent. It's interesting. The Shulchan Aruch is saying about the parsha, the first parsha of Krias Shema. That's where it applies. This pasuk is in the first parsha of Krias Shema, so therefore you have to make him keva. And by doing other things, being distracted while you're saying the first parsha, that's not making keva. That's doing it outright. It's not doing it in a permanent fashion. That's why you shouldn't do these things during that. We can elaborate more on this in Iyun and Shulchan Aruch. Zayin hayosek malacha ratza likros Krias Shema isbata malachto ashikra parsha rishona k'deishal lehe kore arai. If you're involved in your work, right, you started working early in the morning, so you should stop saying Krias Shema. You should say at least the parsha rishona, because if you only say the first pasuk, again, it's not keva. And like I mentioned, I'm going to explain this more in Iyun Ben Sion, but Shulchan Aruch, which is also renamed Iyun to lean on, because you can lean on what I'm saying. You'll be somech what I'm saying. Because if you're engaged in work, you're building, you're doing construction, and you only see the first pasuk, so again, it looks like you're supposed to be kovei itim with Krias Shema, and you're not kovei itim. You're just reading one pasuk. It doesn't seem permanent enough. Let's say, literally construction workers, or they're on top of trees. Don't know what they're doing on top of the trees. Maybe they're cutting the tree down. They're literally on the roof, or they're doing construction on the second story. This is opposed to tefillah. Tefillah needs more kavanah, so you have to go down. But Krias Shema, you can say while you're there, because you only have to have kavanah for pasuk rishon. Let's say someone is carrying. He's one of these people that carry things. We call them here in Israel saval. They carry things on their back. Korei Krias Shema. Literally, people carry refrigerators on their back. You can read Krias Shema when you're picking it up or you're putting it down, so that ruins your kavanah. But while it's on your back, I mean, you're already in a lot of pain, so you're able, to figure out how to have a little more kavanah for Krias Shema, so then it's okay. Even though we said when it comes to tefillin, right, if you have a masa, if something weighs very heavily on your head, you shouldn't wear your tefillin, but Krias Shema, we assume you have enough ability to have kavanah for pasuk rishon. As I mentioned, technically the halacha is you don't really have to think about the Perush Hamil. You don't have to understand what you're saying. All you have to do is resemble saying Krias Shema l'chiyuv, right, as opposed to someone who's editing a Sefer Torah, and obviously he's not doing it for the mitzvah. If it's evident that he's doing it for the mitzvah, even if he's davening b'yachid, he doesn't have to think anything. Just do it. Just do it. Like Nike says, just daf it is my daf yomi shir. See you in Ian to lean on. We'll discuss more about Dibartaba, making the first parsha, Keva, not Arai. See you there. Bye.